guys, Free Play Frank. Today I'm going to be doing a video about my 1976 Ford 1-ton that I put an I.D.I diesel in. And then I'm going to play Rockin Down the Highway by the Doobie Brothers. Now my shout out tonight goes to Johnathan W. Now Johnathan has a very similar operation to what I used to have. He builds his own trucks, he has a towing business. He does all kinds of projects, hot rods, and he restores antique equipment and does engine swaps. And he's in North Carolina. He's around my age, and he's got lots of cool stuff on his channel. You got to check him out. So let's do this.
All right. So this is my 1976 F350. I've had this truck for 25 years. And I built the tilt deck. It's a tilt slide deck. But what this video is about is I'm going to talk about how I converted it to a 7.3 diesel. See if I can get the hood open with one hand. Okay, so here she is. It's a 1991 I.D.I 7.3 diesel. Now this is a non-computer motor, which means you don't need to have a computer module. It runs on one wire. There's one wire, these two wires here, they're both connected to the same thing. This is your fuel on and off. And this wire here, this is for the tach. But unfortunately, I traced the wiring back all through the harness to figure out how to get the tach wired, because I can't find any information online. And fortunately that didn't work out, so I'll probably have to go to an aftermarket tach. And I used all the accessories that came with the 91 motor. We used the bigger 90 amp alternator, and it's got dual exhaust. It's non-turbo, it's just naturally aspirated. It's got dual batteries. I used the dual battery hookup, like the cables and stuff that from the 91. The radiator, this is the biggest radiator you can get for a 73 to 79 F350. This came in the commercial trucks and some of the trucks that came with 460s. This seems to be adequate. I've run this in the summertime driving up hills, and it gets up to around half on the temperature gauge. I used the washer and the overflow tank from the 91. The brake boosters, the 76 original. Now the hardest part about doing this conversion is that you can't use your stock 73 to 79 steering box, because the motor is just so wide it won't clear no matter what you do. So you got to move the steering box up to the front. So I'll do another video from underneath showing you how I did that. But I used the steering from the 93 F250. And what else? Oh, the transmission, I'm running the stock 4-speed from the 73 to 79, the SM, which the heck is it? SM425, I think, a new process 4-speed. And this truck originally came with this 360 with an automatic, and when I got it, it had a 460 with an automatic, and then I ran it for 20 odd years with a straight 6 and a 4-speed on propane. But the propane's not enough power. It's just always lugging all the time. I went through 2 engines in 10 years, so you need more power. But anyways, the 4-speed will bolt right up to the bell housing, but the 7.3s, they never came with a 4-speed. They came with that crappy ZF 5-speed aluminum thing, and I don't want that. I want the old cast iron 4-speed. So how I got around that was I bought a 86 with a 6.9 diesel that had the 4-speed, and I used that bell housing, and I had the flywheel rebalanced. It was a 6.9 flywheel, but it bolts right onto the 7.3, so I had to have it rebalanced for the 7.3, and it works fine. And the starters are the same for automatic and standard on these. And what else? The fuel pump, this has the stock fuel pump that's bolted onto the block, like the old school, like a gasoline engine has, and I'm running that right now. But I also have a primer bulb mounted back beside the fuel tank. and that seems to be adequate. But from what I read online, if you go to an electric fuel pump and you run it at 10 psi, that'll make it run even better, because the injector pump likes to have pressure fed into it. You know, the stock one is 4 psi or something, so I may try that at some point. For now, this is working good. Running the stock 7.3 clutch fan, and as you can see, there's not much clearance there, but you can, believe it or not, I had to change the water pump because the water pump leaked, and I was able to do it without removing the radiator. So alright, I'll show you the inside of the truck. See, I added some extra gauges there, because you have to go to an aftermarket fuel gauge, because the stock fuel gauge won't work on this. Okay, we're underneath now. I want to show you the steering box. Now this is the stock one, like I said, from the 91 F350 two-wheel drive. And these are the tie rod ends, and drag link is the stock from the 91 as well. And the axles are stock from the 76 F350. So what you got to do to make this steering box fit in here is this steel here. This is the frame from the 91. So what I did was I cut out a section of the frame that surrounds this steering box, and I fabricated a bracket to hold the steering box at the same angle and position that it was in the 91, and to give it enough clearance so it clears the motor. You can see it's pretty tight up in there. But what you don't weld this piece to the frame. You have to fabricate a bracket, and then you drill some holes. See, I've got 2 holes at the bottom here, and there's 2 more holes at the top, and then there's a spacer that goes in behind this, between this section here and the outside of the frame, that stops when you tighten the bolts up to hold the steering box in place, it stops it from crushing in, and otherwise you'll have problems with your bolts coming loose all the time. So you have to use those spacers, and you have to bolt this bracket into your frame, because if you don't, it won't pass inspection where I live. But this will pass anywhere because it's bolted in, and I also used, this is the stock cooling, power steering cooling that came with the 91. I fabricated that in there as well. Now for the spindles, this is a tough part. You have to get an E350 Econoline van, like an old motorhome or cube van that's in the 80s. Like, it could go back into the 70s, I'm not sure. I couldn't find a cube van in the 70s around here anymore. The one I used was 82 or 83. But I believe that the spindles will work up to 1990 off of the cube van. And then you use the rotors and the wheels from the cube van, because the old style coined dually wheels won't fit on the new rotors. But the wheel bearings are actually the same. So you can use your old rotors and you can use your old wheels, but the problem is you have to fabricate a mount for your calipers, and of course you can't do that here legally. You're not allowed to make your own brake or steering parts. So the original F350 calipers will fit on these brackets. You just have to swap left and right, and then get the proper hoses that line up, that don't contact your coil springs and point in the right direction, and then that'll work. You can see I had to put some washers underneath the nuts that tighten up the end of the drag link, because the taper is slightly longer and there's not enough thread. So I tightened it all the way up and it wasn't tight enough. So you add a couple washers in there, and now you can crank on that nut and get it nice and tight so the front end stays tight. And it drives good. I'm happy with the way it drives, as much as you can be happy with the twin I-beam front suspension on these things. If you guys know anything about these trucks, they always had trouble from day one with the twin I-beam front suspension. So it's as good as it's going to get. And the radiator hoses, they're in the same place roughly as the 460, on the same side, so it wasn't hard to put rod hoses on. They both fit on there without any. I had to trim one, I think, And then I put a little shield, I don't know if you can see it, there's a tin shield because the rad hose actually touches the steering box. And then I fabricated my own engine mounts. And how I did that was, I had the cab and the front clip off the truck. I had just the bare frame rails sitting there, and I took off all the 6-cylinder and propane equipment. And the transmission I left on, and then I bolted the bell housing up to the transmission, and then I bolted the engine up to the bell housing and positioned it in the right height that I wanted, so I got enough clearance for everything. And I made sure that I had enough clearance so that I could get the starter in and out if I ever had to change it. And I fabricated my own brackets, and again, you have to bolt them to the frame, you can't weld them to the frame, which I did. I have a mag drill. I drilled the holes and got it all exactly where I wanted it. Alright, okay, I'll show you the back of the truck now. Here's the fuel tank on the side of the truck, and I fabricated this bracket as a guard and a step so I could get on and off the deck, and that pump is for the crane. This tank came off of Louisville, 70s Louisville, L600 or 700 gas. And you can see I made my own pickup unit. I used the pickup unit out of the 91, and I had to modify it. And these don't have a fuel pump in the gas tank like the gas trucks. It's just a pickup with the sending unit. And then that's the aftermarket fuel gauge sending unit. The only thing I kind of messed up on a little bit was this. It's hard to get the gas when you put the diesel in. You got to dribble it in slow. It takes like 10 minutes to put $40 worth of diesel in it because of the angle it wants to dribble out. But it works fine. I put this little mud flap on here to keep the tire from spraying muck up onto the filler cap. Alright, we got a Dana 70 rear end, and it was 488 gears when I had the 6-cylinder in it, so we changed it to 354 gears, and it goes about 50 miles an hour now without over revving the engine. I also want to mention about the clutch. Now the 7.3 came with an automatic, which I couldn't use, but I was able to sell the automatic for enough money to buy the 86 Ford parts truck and the Cube Van parts van. So the 86 Ford had a 4-speed and a clutch, and it was the one-piece flywheel with a brand new clutch on it. Now the 7.3 usually comes with a 2-piece flywheel, which is far less desirable. So you're better off to get the 6.9 flywheel and have it balanced to match the 7.3. Okay, we're underneath the dash now because I want to show you how I did the clutch linkage. Okay, you see this steel piece right here is attached to the pivot point where the clutch slide. There's a rod that supports the clutch and the brake pedal, and see I'm pushing the clutch down with my hand now, and you can see that bracket, it's a welded bracket that attaches with that bolt. And the rod is pushing on the hydraulic clutch master cylinder that came with the 86 Ford. It had a brand new one of those. It has the master cylinder, the slave, and the hose is all one piece. So I mounted that on the dash right next to the brake booster, and you got to be really careful about how you get where you locate it, but there is enough room, you can get it in there. And the hose is already bent the right way, so it's not going to touch anything hot, melt. And the steering column, I used the steering column from the 76, but I used the shaft from the 86 because you need the rods at the end between the steering column and the box, that intermediate shaft with the universal joints on it. So in order to get the shaft to fit through the steering column of the 76, I had to machine about 30 thousandths of an inch off on the lathe. But it works fine. It all fits together. It's all a bolt in, so it'll pass inspection anywhere. And the throttle linkage, I just used the cable that came with the diesel engine, and I attached it to the 6-cylinder throttle bracket that mounts to the outside part of the firewall. A cold start for you. Okay, while we're waiting for the glow plugs, on the Ford Trucks enthusiast page, there's a guy named Red Green 74, and he does a conversion on a 3/4 ton 2-wheel drive like this. So if you want to watch his, he's got all his diagrams drawn out, how he did everything, and you know, he can go into more detail than I can go into here. Okay, let's try it. A little bit more glow. You hear that glow plug timer clicking? That's not supposed to be doing that. That means I got a bad ground or something. Yeah, she's a noisy beast. It's not noisy inside. Oh, another thing I did was I added soundproofing inside before I put the rug in. I bought that silver stuff. I forget what it's called, but it's butyl and it has silver on it. I forget what the heck it's called. I'll look it up and I'll post it on the video. But it's not that loud inside. It's about the same as it was when it had the 6-cylinder. So anyways, I'll do another video showing you how the crane and the deck works. That's another video for another day. But anyways, I hope I covered everything. If you want to ask any questions, if you're going to do this swap, then I'm more than happy to help you out.
Get the highway blues, cause you hear my motor running. Flying down the road with my foot on the floor. All the way to town, they can hear me coming. Ford's about to drop, she won't do no more. And I smell my motor burning underneath the hood of smoke. Can't stop. Gotta keep on moving or I lose my mind. Whoa, rockin' down the highway. Whoa, rockin' down the highway. Oh, rockin' down the highway. Oh, rockin' down the highway. Well, the highway patrol got his eye on me. You know what he's thinking, and it ain't no good. He's so fast, they can barely see me. Gotta lose that man like I know I should. Gotta kick in my pedal, make my Ford move a little bit faster. Can't stop. Gotta keep on moving or I lose my mind. Whoa, rockin' down the highway. Whoa, rockin' down the highway. Good Lord now. Whoa, rockin' down the highway. Whoa, rockin' down the highway. Roll, rocking 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 down the highway. All right, that was Rockin' Down the Highway brought by the Doobie Brothers. Thanks guys, and we'll see you next week. Take care.